Going to call Tracy Martin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just to take a short call on the KiwiSaver Budget Measures Bill, and just around the title of the bill. New Zealand First would like to offer some alternatives, some more appropriate alternatives. Let's start with the I'm All Right Jack bill. This is a government that has forced beneficiaries into budgetary services so that they can better manage the little amount of money that they have, and that they must go into budgetary services when they go to seek food because they're so desperate from the government. But this is a government that doesn't understand the math of its own budget. This is a government where a government member stands up and says, I actually can't make the numbers work. And yet, this is the bill they've put before the table. Also, the reason why the I'm All Right Jack bill would be a better title for this piece of legislation is because every member in this House has a substantial contribution from the taxpayers of New Zealand to their KiwiSaver account. How about we didn't have a look at cutting that? How about, instead of taking this incentive from the everyday New Zealanders that require it, from the young people that are going to come into the workforce ongoing, it's not like, to say that people aren't going to sign into KiwiSaver ongoing just doesn't make any sense when we continually have young people growing and joining the workforce. For goodness sake, think it through before you bring legislation to the House. Here's another one. Here's another title, Mr Chair. The Chop Our Nose Off to Spite the New Zealand Public Face Bill. Because this one is, no matter what, we're going to get into some sort of, and it's an artificial surplus. I will take a bet with you, Dr Clark. I will take a bet. I will bet that this government will not reside in those benches long enough to get into a real surplus. A surplus that is actually real.
Probably right.
So you and I, bottle of lovely red wine that my husband produces, if I lose that bet, on you.
I think you're right.
On you. Here's another title, sir, that we might like to consider. The KiwiSaver Blind Ideology Surpluses at All Costs, no matter what it does to the New Zealand public bill. How about that? Because listen to the math, and I actually noticed that it's silenced for a moment there when Fletcher Tabito, who knows what he's talking about, went away and did the math. Mr Woodhouse hasn't done the math. Mr Woodhouse hasn't done the math. Neither has any other member of the backbenchers. And I would actually suggest, I thought it was very interesting that Mr Bishop remarked how many members there were in the daylight of the government benches, down here today in the daylight, actually talking or being around here for this very important bill as they stripped away an incentive from the New Zealand public, from the young people who are going to come into the workforce and going to join that scheme. So I suggest that the New Zealand public go and have a look at 8:35, 9:35, 10:35, 11:35. Go and check out Parliament TV from last night, and just tie that in with the comments that Mr Bishop made earlier today. Here's another title, sir. The KiwiSaver, I don't know what I stand for, but my whip told me to vote for it, bill. So, this is what we have here, Mr Chair. This is actually an incredibly important piece of legislation that has major downstream effects for the New Zealand family. Whether it be through the economy side of the New Zealand family, or for each individual New Zealand family, each individual New Zealand worker. Downstream effects of this, of money flowing back into, and New Zealand being able to invest in itself, the New Zealand family being able to back itself with its own money, as opposed to seeking overseas money. And this government is very good at saying New Zealand needs more investment. New Zealand needs more investment. We agree. We would like to see New Zealanders being able to back themselves. And long term, this is exactly what this fund has done. This is exactly what this fund has done. But not only has this government decided to strip away the incentives at the start of this scheme for any young person that wants to actually join up, they've decided that you can now rip it out. Instead of the purpose it was made for, you can rip it out and go and buy a house with it. So this is basically what the government has done, sir, with regard to this bill is, again, removed its responsibilities and its obligations to manage the economy wisely. They've decided that they're going to put this back onto the New Zealand public, and the New Zealand public needs to be aware of it.
Mr. Chair.
I call Chris Hipkins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is where the budget spin